Hi, Lauren James from Eat Smart Nutrition here. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and advanced sports dietitian. Today, I want to talk to you about protein, and in particular, protein powders. They're certainly very popular at the moment and have been for a number of years. But do you know which one that you should be taking and whether you should be taking one at all? Let's explore that today, and I'll give you some answers towards the end for certain circumstances where protein powders may well be appropriate. But first of all, let's talk about protein as a nutrient. Why do we even need to have protein? So protein is required for the growth, repair and maintenance of our entire body, really, including our immune system. So it's important for our skin and hair and lots of our different cells in the body. In Australia, we're really lucky. We certainly have a lot of access to protein-based foods, and most Australians are not at risk of protein deficiency. The other advantage of protein-based foods are that they do make you feel full. And you've probably heard of the number of higher protein diets on the market. Certainly Atkins enjoyed quite a lot of popularity for some time. And we now have some high protein and low carb diets that are still in vogue. So that sense of fullness can be really helpful if you are trying to lose weight. But as with most things in life, there does need to be a bit of a balance. If we're having exclusively very high protein intakes, sometimes that can mean that we're missing out on some of the other nutrients we might need in the diet. So protein, where do we get it from in foods? We certainly get it from meat products, all different types of meat, red meat, fish, chicken, seafood, those sorts of things. We also get it from eggs, dairy products, so things like milk and yogurt and cheese, and even soy-based dairy products do have protein in them also. Pulses and legumes, so your chickpeas, your kidney beans, hummus, those sort of things, lentils, and also nuts and seeds provide us with protein. So to ensure that we do have a healthy protein intake over the day, I would certainly recommend that you do spread your protein over the day so that we have some at breakfast, maybe in snacks as well, but certainly in lunch and dinner. If you're someone that tends to have not too much food over the day, maybe more of a snacker than meals, and then tend to have a bigger meal at night time, the evidence and the research would show that this probably isn't the ideal way to consume our protein. The recommendation would be to drip feed that protein over the day, so at breakfast, morning tea, lunch, and so on. It doesn't need to be a large serve of protein-based foods, and certainly it doesn't have to be meat if you don't enjoy meat. If you use your hand as a guide, and your own hand is appropriate for your own body size, so a piece of red meat, I would recommend having the size of your own palm and thickness of your palm as well. If we're talking chicken, I would recommend 3/4 of a hand, and if we're talking fish, whole hand. But remember, fingers together, not fingers apart, so a piece of fish about this size. Our other recommendation would be to try and make sure that we use lower fat protein sources. So if we're talking meat, that we do cut the fat off the meat and don't consume it. Now, you may have heard of Meat Free Monday. It's a bit of a health campaign trying to encourage people to eat more legumes, so things like lentils, chickpeas, maybe even eggs as a meal instead of having meat every day. This is recommended from a health point of view, but also there's probably an environmental factor that goes along with it as well. So those legumes, those beans do tend to be a good source of fibre, as well as having that protein in there. We might also use dairy products as our protein source at times. Things like tofu and tempeh and vegetarian type proteins can certainly be used as a very good quality protein source in the diet. And in fact, if we're using tofu or tempeh, we can still use that hand size as our portion guide. So I did mention that I'm going to talk about protein powders, and we'll get into that topic right now. Now, if your goal is to gain muscle, so if you're in the gym really training hard and you need to put on some muscle or want to put on some muscle, we do need to make sure that you're having a good intake of protein over the day. But protein isn't the only nutrient that you need for muscle gain. In fact, you need enough total energy. You need to be consuming enough total food in the day because building muscle is an extra activity of the body. So we need to make sure that there's ample nutrients, ample nutrition, so that your body is primed and ready to grow that new muscle. But you certainly can't just sit on the couch and get that muscle to grow. You do have to be doing the training. So we need to be in the gym with the right program, hopefully written by, say, a personal trainer or someone who has a qualification in the exercise area. And certainly it does help if you have genetics on your side as well. So if you have the right parents that are pretty good at growing muscle, that's certainly going to help you as well. But do you need protein powder? Well, you only need protein powder if you can't consume adequate energy, total food in the day, or if you're struggling to get enough protein in. Maybe that's due to time, maybe it's a convenience type option for you. So having a protein powder is not necessary, but it may well be convenient for some people. Now, if our goal is actually weight loss, if we're looking to decrease fat mass over the body and our primary goal is have a lower weight on the scales, or maybe a smaller dress size or pant size, or just a reduction of measurements over the body, then we can use protein-based foods to help with that satiation or that fullness, as I mentioned towards the start of this video. But we also do need to make sure that you're getting plenty of other nutrients in as well. In the case of weight loss, sometimes we will actually use a protein powder or a protein shake, or maybe a bar also, as a way to help control appetite, and maybe as a snack option for someone, or sometimes a meal replacement, so that we can help control their appetite and they don't want to eat as much. But certainly that's not necessary. We can use 100% food, and as a dietitian, we like our food, and so we do tend to recommend having a food first policy. So where we can use food as our primary source of nutrition, we do. But where we can't get enough of the right nutrients in at the right time, then we may look for a supplement, maybe something like a protein powder. Now, if your goal is actually a little bit of both, you want a bit of muscle gain as well as a bit of fat loss. Some people might call it toning. It is possible to do both of those at the same time, but not to any great degree in either direction. So if you want to gain a small amount of muscle and lose a small amount of body fat, that is possible. But if you're looking for big muscle mass gains or large body fat drops, to do both of those activities at the same time is actually in conflict, I guess you could say. In order to grow muscle, we need extra calories. But in order to lose body fat, we actually need to moderate or make sure that we're not having too many calories. So they're actually in opposition to each other. So we do need to either accept that our results are going to be small in either direction, or we need to choose one goal at a time if we're looking for bigger results in a shorter time frame. Now, into those supplements. So what's the difference between them? You've probably heard of the whey protein supplements. So there's whey protein isolate and whey protein concentrate. So the basic difference between those is just to do with absorption. The WPI, or whey protein isolate, is generally quicker absorbed. Is that really important? Probably not so much, to be honest. For most people, that's not really the greatest issue, is the absorption of the protein. Generally, we absorb it quick enough for our body's requirements anyway. The whey protein concentrate, some people will use because it tends to stay in their system a bit longer, maybe fill them up a little bit more. You may also find that some of the protein supplements available on the market tend to have a blend of both, so I guess we're getting the best of both worlds. Now, generally speaking, a whey protein supplement is going to be low in carbohydrate. Typically, that's how they formulate them. We can also get ones that what we call a balanced protein, so where there's protein, oftentimes a whey-based protein, and then they will mix it with some carbohydrate. The optimal usage of protein, so if we're really looking for muscle gain, then typically we will use the more balanced proteins. The reason for that is that we do need some carbohydrate to maximally use the protein within the body. So if our goal is muscle gain, the quicker and better we can use that protein, the more recovery and the better muscle mass gains we're likely to have. But in the case of weight loss, it would usually be the WPI or possibly a WPC that we would be recommending, if we recommend one at all. But what you do need to understand is that those protein supplements still have calories in them. They still contain energy. So if you're trying to minimize your calorie intake, then a protein supplement is not a freebie. We do need to make sure that we're accommodating it within your whole meal plan and what you're consuming over the day. If you're consuming excess calories, just like if you consume excess alcohol or excess fat or excess carbs, excess protein, if we're not using it, will just go into storage as fat and therefore can actually make you gain weight if you're having those protein supplements when your body doesn't actually really need them. Another thing, just a tip I suppose, is to make sure that you read the label of the particular protein that you pick up. Now, some proteins, it might be 1 scoop as a serving size. Some of them might be more like 2 scoops, 2.5 scoops. Some are even 4 scoops. So do make sure that you read the label carefully, because if your previous protein, maybe that was 2 scoops and you buy a new one and keep using 2 scoops, that may be that you're having double the serving size, and that's also double the calories. Just a little tip to make sure that you are consuming an adequate amount of calories and not in excess amount of calories. So, another thing you might have heard of, it was going around a couple of years ago, is that chocolate milk is good after training, which might sound a bit ridiculous when we think about chocolate milk having quite a lot of sugar in it. But the reason why chocolate milk was used is most people like the taste of chocolate, so that makes the milk tastier to get down. But really it's about the carbohydrate content that's in the chocolate milk. So there's some carbs from the actual milk itself, and then there's also the sugar or the sweetening agent from the chocolate. So that's our carbohydrate component, and then the milk has protein. So I guess you could say it's a reasonably natural protein powder. Now, do you have to use something like that? No, and in fact I'd probably recommend trying to look for one that's lower in sugar, or maybe even mixing up your own milk with a small amount of flavouring in it, so that we're not getting as much of the sugar content, and that's particularly if you're looking for weight loss or fat loss. Hopefully that's explained to you the different protein powders and why you might use them from a weight loss point of view, but also a muscle mass gain point of view. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.